Every time someone has asked me who they should play to carry the split, I always tell them to learn Senna. She is easily one of the best supports to climb with, and if you aren't playing her, you're missing out on free LP. I think that Senna is currently so overtuned that if you go even in lane, you just win the game. Senna currently has two builds she can go. You either go Enchanter or the Black Cleaver build. I think both builds are actually equally as strong, but one build will be better than the other depending on her team comp. I have been blind picking Senna since she's that OP and have been finding success going both builds. I'm going to talk about her Enchanter build first and then go into her Cleaver build. The reason why Enchanter Senna is so broken is because she outscales all enchanters and she gets extra gold from souls, which allows her to become relevant in games very quickly. There's really no reason for Senna to be getting 8 gold per drop soul if no other support gets this extra income. Her late game feels stronger than Sona and her early/mid game is nowhere near as bad. The runes that I like to go for Enchanter Senna are Airy, Mana Flow Ban, Transcendence, Gathering Storm, and Resolve Secondary with Font and Revitalize. For her shards, I like going Attack Speed, Adaptive, and Flat or Scaling Health depending on the matchup. Pretty standard stuff, nothing crazy. As for her build, I always try to prioritize rushing Boots of Swiftness first because it allows me to farm more souls, harass harder, and to stay safe in lane. I normally preach for enchanters to delay tier 2 boots and to go for their first item, but for Senna, Swifty's Rush is the way to go. Senna's kit is made to be more aggressive, and the early movement speed helps with her lack of mobility. Even in lanes where she has to sit back and play safe, it helps a lot. After boots, we go into Helia. One thing about the build path is if you are against a hard lane, I like rushing the HP portion first to give me more survivability, but if the lane is free, I'll go Amtome, Fairy Charm into the Ruby Crystal. After Helia, I like going Dawncore second as the build path for the double forbidden idols is cheap and feels great for the components. After Dawncore, we build Bandoglass Mirror because the mana regen converts to extra AP and heal and shield due to Dawncore's passive and finish off the build with Moonstone. And for the support item, you're going to go Dreammaker. In order to be successful with the Enchanter build, you have to constantly be thinking about maximizing Helia stacks in teamfights. Senna has a lot of heals and shields from her Q, ult, summoner spell, and even her E from Airy. You want to find that balance of min-maxing Helia, but you can't get too greedy always holding stacks, otherwise your team might just die. You can see here that I'm only queuing after I get 2 stacks. It's a lot easier to cycle shards when teamfights are very slow and you can play very safe. That last one was a pretty basic showcase of Helia cycling with autos and Q, but here I'm triggering 5 shards of Helia in 10 seconds with my E, summoner spell heal, and Q. Enchanter Senna really shines in slow fights or very front to back team fights because if she can stay safe and heal everyone, she just stat checks the enemy. Moving on to the Cleaver build, the reason why Cleaver Senna is so OP is due to her interaction with Cleaver and the agency she gets as support. Due to Senna's passive of applying on hit, every time she autos or Qs, she applies 2 stacks of cleave. You run Airy, it applies every 3 times because it counts as damage, which is insane. You can apply 30% armor reduction in less than a second with just auto Q. Senna also has one of the highest solo agencies in lane and out of lane. She does not need to rely on her AD carry as much to win lane as she has a lot of damage herself. Most damage supports were patched out of the game when they cut World Atlas to give 800 gold, but Senna gets past that because of her extra soul income. You still definitely have to rely on your teammates with Cleaver to fully utilize the armor shred, but it's a lot less than playing something like an engage support or an enchanter. You have a lot more room to harass and carry by yourself, which is perfect for solo queue. The runes for Cleaver Senna are Airy, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, and Gathering Storm. I know people have been taking Grasp, but I think Airy is better just because of the Cleaver interaction, and also Grasp is getting nerfed in the next patch, so I think Airy is and will be the best. And then for secondary, I like going Cashback and Jack of all trades. I normally dislike going Cashback on supports since you need 3 items to make up the value of free boots, but I like rushing Swifties and Senna's items are expensive, so you actually get a lot more value from Cashback. Cashback in combination with gold from souls allows you to build expensive items with no problem. And then for the shards, attack speed, adaptive, and flat or scaling health depending on the matchup. Moving on to the items. I like rushing Boots of Swiftness on Cleaver Senna as well, but I'll always try to get tier 1 boots and a longsword first just so I can hit the first 5 stacks of Jack of all trades. That 10 adaptive force early goes a very long way. After Swifties, I'll go Black Cleaver into Zeal. At this point, you have 9 unique stacks for Jack of all trades, so I'll throw in an Amtome in there to hit 10 stacks to get additional adaptive. I'll convert the Zeal into Rapid Fire Cannon, and then for the third item, I like flexing Banshees or Zanyas. I know it sounds crazy having these as a third item, but not only does the AP allow us to hit the 10 unique stacks, which gives us around 1800 gold worth of stats by the way, but the AP is actually useful on Senna because she has good AP ratios. Her Q gives 60% increased healing, and her ult has a 70% AP ratio on the damage and 50% AP ratio on the shield. When you get to the point where you are at your third item, a lot of things will start one-shotting you, and with Banshees or Zanyas, you can play a lot more aggressively. I actually think Medjay's is fine as well. If you don't feel the need for any of these, you would just buy the Dark Seal after Zeal. And then for the support item, you're going to be going Bloodsong. The Cleaver Senna build is a lot more straightforward to play than the Enchanter build because all you need to do is try to auto-Q the enemy for your Cleaver stacks and to proc Bloodsong. For the most part, you should be saving Q for your enemies, but you can heal your teammates if you are out of combat or if they are about to die. Like I said earlier, I actually think both builds are surprisingly equally as strong, but it really just depends on your draft. I like going Enchanter Senna when I have a lot of bruisers and tanks for the front line. If you are playing in a draft where you'll know you'll be safe and teamfights are going to be pretty slow, Enchanter Senna will 1v9 because you give a disgusting amount of sustain to your front line. For the Cleaver build, I like to run it if we have a lot of AD. This was honestly a no-brainer here with Rengar, Gangplank, and Jinx. Another scenario where I like to go Cleaver is if we are lacking AD. For this draft, I think Enchanter wouldn't be bad because we have 2 bruisers for our front line, but I went Cleaver here because Xin Zhao is our only AD. For the most part though, you will find value with both builds. I do think that in lower ELO, it might be better to go AD strictly because you have more agency to carry yourself rather than playing Enchanter and relying on your team. The key to being good for both builds is to not die in the laning phase and to be able to scale. One thing that separates a good Senna from a great Senna is their ability to be oppressive in lane. Senna is a very delicate champion where if you miss space or overcommit, you will die very easily. Great Senna players have amazing spacing and know when they can or can't play aggressively. I think it's also important to understand that there are some matchups where you can't walk up at all, but it's okay to go even or be behind because you will eventually outscale almost all of your matchups. Whenever you are learning a new champion, it's important to limit test to maximize the potential of your champion. If you are just picking up Senna, her easiest matchups are Enchanters because even if you overcommit, you won't die. You can play super aggressively in this matchup with relative ease. Senna's worst matchups are Hook or Engage champs. There are windows where you can play aggressively, but this one is a lot harder. Quick tip, Senna's Q cooldown is reduced by 1 second every time you hit something, so in teamfights, make sure to be aware of that. I will hit anything near me just to get that cooldown lower. Another trick, try to use most of your stacks for harassing the enemy. You will get more souls this way because minions have a higher percentage of dropping souls if you don't execute them. A very common mistake Senna players make is using their support stacks for cannon. Cannon minions are always guaranteed to drop a soul if you don't kill them. Obviously, you want to use your stacks if you're at 3, but for the most part, try to use them on the enemy. Senna is currently one of the strongest supports, and I would recommend taking the time to learn her. She's not getting nerfed in 14.20, so you have a lot of time to climb with her. I have been pretty much blind picking Senna every game at the start of Split because she is that strong, and also for the new rank start, you need to hard carry yourself. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any build recommendations, I'd love to hear them. Let me know in the comments. Good luck climbing, summoners.